Welcome to the Spice of Life podcast, where we take bold risks, build real wealth, and use money as a tool for freedom and legacy. I'm Luke Spicer, and each week we uncover the principles of ownership, independence, to business and life. Whether you're an investor, entrepreneur, or tradesperson, this show is about creating freedom today and legacy for tomorrow. Hey everybody, welcome to the Spicer Life podcast. I'm your host, Luke Spicer. Today on the show, I've got my good friend and client, Rob Lacey from Delta Remediation. Hey Rob, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Luke. Appreciate it. It's a great opportunity to help get what we do out to the world and have a good chat with a buddy at the same time.
Exactly. We talked before we went on air, but I do love your big winter beard that you're getting ready for to, go out hunting and things, I imagine. And
Totally. Yep. You betcha. It's around the corner.
yeah, I was like, when do you actually leave for hunting? The reason I asked is I actually have a bunch of people now. They're like, oh, I'm gone for hunting. I'm like, oh, I don't even know when hunting season is really. So
Depends on where you hunt. Hunting season starts in September for some, I think, bow hunters and stuff like that. But the general hunting season in Alberta for like whitetail tags and stuff like that starts November 1st. So Um, for most people, it's November, but for specialized people in specialized areas, they've been at it for a bit. BC starts earlier too.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I was actually talking to a lady earlier today that had um yeah, her husband was just left for hunting and they're in BC. So there you go. So hey, so tell me a little bit because like I actually don't know. That's the crazy thing. I mean, I've known you for oh god, like decades, it feels like, and maybe not quite that long, 15 years-ish, probably. I don't know.
I'd say
It's
that's
been a while.
most reasonable. Yeah, you were used to be dancing with all the high ups in Red Deer. That was where you first came on the scene for me, was Dancing with the Stars.
I
And
guess. Yeah. I forget.
my mom having a UFC buddy. I was like, who's this guy that does UFC and is buddies with my mom? I gotta find out who this guy is.
But did you come to that fight?
No, I never came to the fight. I think I went to one of your Dancing with the Stars events though.
One of them, you make it sound like I did it a bunch. I did it one time. But no,
No,
I forgot that when I did that MMA fight in Red Deer that your mom and dad came and I can't remember who else was with them, but it was crazy because I remember the promoter was like, "How the heck did you get that table to come to your fight of all things?" And I was like, "Oh, and, man, I know I fight, but I'm still a business owner in the city and we do a lot of work and I'm like, "Hey, I'm fighting." And they're like, "Let's check this out." And I remember how much they liked it or whatever. Yeah, that's wow, that takes me back, and I got my ass kicked too, that was the worst part. I got put in a crucifix, and he elbowed me in the face for, like, 2.5 minutes till the ref stopped the fight, but yeah, stupid MMA, that felt like work, man. I liked it when I was just kickboxing and Muay Thai, that was so much simpler, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah.
so, Rob, how long have you done this remediation company then?
We've been at it for about 10 years. So we started in 2015 and yeah, kind of rounding that decade of service, I guess you could say. And there was probably a little bit of work that sort of preamble that was before then, but I would say that we've been at it for 10 years.
Okay. So, I mean, you're not we're close to the same age, like, what are you, 40?
I'm going to be turning 42 in a couple of months, or a month.
We're even closer then, okay. So then before that, what did you do before you had your own company then? What were you doing?
Well, I guess I should preface that I've pretty much been in business for myself since I was 20 years old. Even when I was in university, I started a organic fresh squeezed lemonade business that I had in Kelowna, and I'd go to the farmers markets and clear $800 cash in a Saturday morning. And so business has been in my blood. My dad's Peter Lacey, and he started Service Equipment Corporation, and my grandfather is Jack Donald, who, as you know, recently passed away, but started Parkland Industries. And so definitely had a lot of sort of business leaders close to me growing up, and always liked the idea of, being a boss and starting a company and doing cool things. And I also always loved the idea of, Captain Planet, I guess you'd say, saving the planet from the evil corporation. And it's a little bit difficult because being a businessman, you kind of are the evil corporation. but I wanted to create business strategies that created value for the client without detriment to society. So I call it triple net, meaning it's a benefit for the client, a benefit for me. We're making some money, but we're doing both of those things. I'm saving you money, I'm making money, and we're making, tomorrow. Before I got into the remediation business, I started a business doing what's now called circular economy, but it was waste diversion of concrete and asphalt from landfills. So when you do a demolition project and you have a parking lot to rip up and throw out, if it goes to the landfill, which it most often does, it just sits there, and you pay $65 a ton to dispose of it, and that's it. You're done. And really, there's a lot of value in those materials, and so we started diverting concrete and asphalt waste from landfills. We'd build a big mountain of it, and then we'd run it through our crusher, and we'd make recycled aggregate. And I started that company in BC back in 2012. We took on a big contract north of Edmonton shortly thereafter, and I came out to help run the business. And one thing led to another, and I actually grew up in Red Deer, moved to BC, fell in love with BC, had no intentions of moving back to Alberta. I mean, I'll always be an Alberta boy at heart. But, yeah, business sort of went a different direction, lots of opportunity for the concrete recycling here, and, pretty soon after those first couple of contracts, I got a new business partner, Mike DeAngelis, who I'm still in business with today, and we're still crushing. We have a new crusher, so we're on our second crusher, but we're still doing that, concrete and asphalt recycling, and I just think it's a great business. If somebody used to pay $65 to throw it in the dump, now they pay us $35 a ton. We recycle it and sell it back to industry for 20, $25 a ton. So in some cases, we get paid on both ends to take it and to sell it. A lot of times now we'll end up just taking it for free. But we're diverting something that would otherwise just sit and rot in a landfill. We're creating a product that's needed in urban centers, whereas, virgin aggregates from gravel pits are getting further and further from urban centers like Edmonton. So our supply side is, 10 minutes outside of the core versus 2.5 hours. So there's a whole climate benefit, or I guess, carbon neutral or carbon negative, less roads, less trucks on the road. But that business really showed us that the, that what we're doing in that business certainly is helpful for industry and for the environment and for, the regular Albertan. But what the bigger problem is the landfilling of contaminated soil. So when a oil and gas operator goes to clean up a lease because they're returning it, there's no more oil in the well or whatever. 9 times out of 10, all they do is dig it all up, put it in a truck, drive it down the road, drop it off, go to some farmer's field, make a deal, dig up his new dirt, bring it to the site, drop it off, and call it good. And I mean, sure, at face value, that sounds pretty reasonable. But if you expand your sort of approach to be a bit longer than a couple of years, or, whatever, somebody's gonna have to deal with that. You didn't actually provide any remedy to that site, you just moved it. And so we looked at the different solutions that were out there, and we knew that, at the end of the day, you can have a great solution. If it costs a nickel more than a not great solution, people are gonna go for the not great solution because it's a nickel less. And so we knew that we needed to come to industry with something that was cost competitive. And so there are some other remediation strategies that are out there, thermal, using heat, or using chemicals. Those two are great, but they're quite expensive. Bioremediation is what Delta specializes in, and that's actually using microorganisms to break down pollutants. And so we saw this as an opportunity to bring bioremediation back into Canada, and yeah, we've been at it for the last 10 years. We started off just working with off-the-shelf products. In 2018, we developed our own suite of remediation technologies, and we've been continually improving them ever since. We don't have the ideology that we've had this eureka moment and here's this thing that we're gonna take to market. It's always changing. How can we make it better? How can we make it cheaper? And yeah, it's been a journey, man.
That's okay. That's a lot. So I wanna back up for a second because do you now this is a personal question, but I can see do you do mobile crushing? Or does everybody haul it to you guys? You guys have a yard?
Both. So it's a mobile crusher. So we have it's 80,000 pounds on tracks, goes on a big semi truck, and it's a half a day to fold it all up, and it's a bit of a transformer. But we don't, if you've got, a couple foundations, it wouldn't make sense for us to move it.
Dude,
Typically 3,000.
I've been hauling concrete to my property for 15 years because I was gonna bring in a crusher, and then when I started looking at it, it sounded like it was too much, and I still have to clean this up. I buried half of it and made a big berm for tobogganing, but I was like, I'm not gonna get into that for the show, but we're gonna talk
Yeah.
after because I got some numbers because I gotta do something. So we'll I don't wanna get into my own specifics. It's funny, but it's like, I mean, maybe it would work, but we'll talk numbers later. Um, so you did, I mean, and I don't wanna make this about, the family, but it is an important part, and, like, your dad obviously had started a massive home building operation in Central Alberta with his longtime, growing up kid. They'd move out here, they do that, and then he switches and he's got service, and they're what did they end up having, like, 23, like,
No, it's more like
locations?
60,
Is that what it is now? Well, this is I'm my brain's going back even years ago. But yeah, and then your grandpa, Jack Donald, Parkland Petroleum. It's funny because a lot of people don't know what Parkland Petroleum is, I don't think. They might, right? But it's like fast gas, Husky, your grandpa's.
Blue Wave is one that everybody knows of now.
Yeah.
And racetrack gas, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of brands under the umbrella for sure.
Yeah, I was sad when I heard that the other day that Parkland Petroleum sold to a US company. I mean, good for the company and the shareholders and anybody that's involved, probably grandma still, right? But, like, at the end of the day, just, like, seeing that, it was so neat, man. I remember so, yeah, like, I helped Festival of Trees. I was one of those, like, people calling all my friends to donate and help out and do that stuff, and I helped a lot with the home building side when we used to donate the house, the building company would build the house, and I was a trades guy, and I did it. But I remember getting invited one year to your grandpa and grandma's house for this, like, wind-up dinner to say thank you to us that were doing this thing, and I'm a, young man. I was young. I was still, yeah, I was still drinking, so, like, it was at least 15, 16 years ago that I woulda got this, like, invite, brand new, couple years into my concrete company, and I wanna do all this charitable work to put our name out there, and I was like, so I did the Festival of Trees and the hospital lottery and the Kinsman, like, I did 3 homes in 1 year, all the concrete. And we got missed for Festival of Trees, and your mom and your grandma reached out, and that's how I met them, like, actually more just from this, like, issue, and just how they handled themselves, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And then I went the first year, and then your mom checked in with me and was like, "What'd you think?" And I was like, "This is pretty neat." And, I had some feedback to give her because I felt like I could give her this feedback, and she's like, "Well, do you wanna come join our special sponsorship team?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure," and I met all these great people. And I get this invite to your, grandma and grandpa's house for this big dinner, and at the time, I went like, my ex-wife didn't wanna come. She was my wife, but she didn't wanna go, and I remember going to go out to this event, and, I'm like, it's a dress up thing, and I put on my shoes, and I got a call from the guys, and I had to do a swing around to a job site, and I stepped in all this mud, right? And I was like, "Frick," and I was pissed, and I was driving, I was gonna be, like, running for time, and I was like, "I'll just go. I mean, I'll kick my shoes off outside." And, and something in my brain was like, "You need to go get new shoes." And I was like, "Whatever." And so I listened to my intuition. I drove and I got shoes, and then I showed up, and I brought a bottle of wine, and I knocked on the door, and your grandpa, answers the door. And I said, "Oh, hi, hi, Jack." I said, "I got a bottle of wine for you and your wife for dinner." And he's like, "What are you doing? Like, this is to thank you. You're not supposed to be bringing more guests." I'm like, "Oh, I guess you're gonna owe me another one then," kinda like joking around, right? And he's like, All the years that we've done these events, like, nobody's ever done this. They're coming because, we're doing this, but this just goes to show, like, the kind of young man you are." And there was a lot of vehicles out front, and I looked down, and I didn't see any shoes. And I was like, "Where's everybody's shoes?" And I looked into the living room, and everybody was wearing their shoes on that white carpet. And I was like, "Oh my god, am I ever glad I bought brand new shoes?" Like, if I showed up, I'd have been the only idiot walking around in sock feet, and I'll never forget that. And then anytime, like, not that he was like a big mentor for me or anything like that in like a, an ongoing thing, but anytime I would run into him, right, he'd always ask me like how I was doing, what was new, what was business, and he'd always have this little like tidbit of info or this little like nugget of information that would like help me. And I just always think like what a cool dude. Like that's all I thought. I was like, he's just a genuinely nice guy, and then you can see that with your mom and dad and, how they wanna help people and, do good for their community and do those kinda things, and so it's neat, like, seeing, yourself and your brother and your sister and just seeing kinda what they're all doing and, and they've all got their own, partners and businesses and different things that they're involved in, so I just yeah, it's always been one of those things, like a kind of a blessing to, like, know the family, and yeah, definitely the community, misses somebody like your grandpa and, like, what they were doing for, the betterment of society, and so when you talk about big corporations and how how you said that you were leading into that, I'm thinking like, yeah, but gosh, I mean, your understanding of big corporation, I mean, it yes, there's bigger ones, but I mean, that's a pretty darn big corporation. What I don't even remember. Was it 9 billion or something like that it ended up selling for? That's pretty
Something
crazy.
like
That's
that,
pretty
yeah. To
cool.
be honest, I don't actually know either. Yeah, you know what? They don't make him like they used to. Jack was one of a kind, and he's definitely a mentor for me in many many ways. As much as a young boy, as much as an adult. But you know what? He was always genuinely curious. That was one thing that I would say. He didn't. You know, some people ask you like how you're doing, but they don't actually give a shit. They're just asking you how you're doing because it's what they're supposed to say. You know, Jack would actually listen. He'd actually and he'd remember, you know. Even when he was in hospice towards the end there, the last time that I got to visit with him, he asked me how my project in Kuwait was going, you know, because that was, last time I saw him before that was we were obviously talking about work, and he was always genuinely curious in what I was doing and where I was working and how it was going, and how's it going in Kuwait? And that's a whole nother story, but yeah, it was I think if I could sum up that sort of spirit that you're talking about, with Jack, he was genuinely curious. And I think that, in today's busy age of, 15-second reels and, you got, I think just being able to practice that presence, to be able to, he never had a cell phone. He never had one. He had a car phone for a little while,
Yeah,
but, I just find like even and I'm guilty as charged 100%. Like you're in a meeting and you have your phone turned down so you don't see the screen flash and stuff, and but you still catch yourself every once in a while and you're just flipping it's just different. And but his generation was before that, and he never there's a I actually have had the conversation with my brother and stuff like, imagine what Papa could have done if he had a smartphone, but who knows? Maybe he wouldn't have done as much as he did because of the fact that he was face to face. And if you wanted to talk to Jack, you had to come and sit down. And his thing, I don't know if I have any of his little cards handy here, but his
no,
big
the
deal with
notepad?
always yeah,
Yeah,
little Parkland Properties notepads.
yeah, the note
He'd always have one in his pocket, and, you'd sit down for a meeting, and he just would pick it out. Maybe half of it had, like, his grocery list on it, and he'd flip it around on the back, and he'd scribble a bunch of stuff down, and he'd usually give it to me. I have a collection of little notes from Pop over the years, and so, yeah, I mean, I guess, do what works, but, I think that, genuine curiosity is something that, I have found to be a very good approach to dealing with challenging issues, you know?
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually really and it does, you can't really sum up an entire life, but it does. He was always curious and, like, he'd ask you questions, and it was always, like, one of those things where he would just, yeah, ask I can remember that, like, asking me so many different things, and people like to talk about themselves, obviously, but he was asking it because he was genuinely interested and want to know, and you never knew if he was gonna pick something up that he'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna, put that in my, memory bank for later or whatever," right? So, something that would be, and a lot of people would look, I think, well, you come from this family that's been building businesses for years, so it must be easy for you, is what I'm assuming, like, a lot of people might think.
Mm.
I've always just seen you as this driven guy that's just out doing his thing, right? Like, I mean, whether you have, help or not, I mean, the mindset help, everybody always thinks it's money, right? Like, that's the best thing to do, and it's like, man, if you don't have the mindset ready for putting that money to work, the money's not gonna last anyway. It's not even gonna help you. You're gonna burn through it, turn around and
Mhm.
say, can I have more? So, did you feel like you've ever had to take bold risks, within your business, to get to the next stage?
Yeah, I mean, being in business in general is a risk, right? Taking the easy road and having a job is obviously a lot safer. I mean, I'm not sure if you have a copy of Grandma and Papa's book, but they talk about when they were first getting started in business. My grandma was a bank teller, and they went to the bank that she worked at to get this loan to start this business, and that not only did they deny the loan, but the bank owner sort of reprimanded her for even thinking about it, that how could you, put this risk out there? So I think that anytime that we're trading our time for money, or sometimes we're, trading our time for a potential for money in the future with business, if it's not a job and you're the owner, I mean, there's been plenty of times over the years that I didn't take a paycheck because the money needed to stay in the business. And so, it's was business more accessible for me versus somebody else? Yeah, I was. I think that I'm super blessed to have the mentorship and, the ability to go after some of these opportunities. But it hasn't been easy by any stretch. It hasn't been easy. And, you know, I was, I don't know that it was ever really offered to us. It wasn't like I had this opportunity to just step into service and be even a general manager. I mean, I probably could have been a general manager in Trochu and worked my way up and been a division manager for Alberta or something, and maybe could have eventually saw myself on the senior team there. But service was a public company, and even if it was private, there was no free rides, and there was no nepotism in the way that, at least my father ran his business. And so, yeah, it was kind of, carve your own path. And, I guess I saw the opportunity to, not just get into business. And looking back, I mean, it probably would have been a lot easier to just get into a business that makes money, like making socks, or, you having a printing company that makes, coffee mugs, that kind of stuff. That probably would have been a lot simpler. Doing what we're doing, in sort of the biotechnology space, and being a market disruptor in the age-old remediation space, absolutely nothing has been easy. But yeah, I feel blessed and honored to have this opportunity, and I really do feel that, you know, I'm I'm a proud Albertan, I'm a proud Canadian. I've been prouder, I'll just leave it at that. But, I think there's a lot of hard work that needs to happen in this country. We've got, a great resource industry. I do believe that Alberta oil is much more sustainable in comparison to Venezuelan oil, or Iraqi oil, or whatever. But there is room for improvement in how we do things here too. And, we kind of want to be seen as that, beacon of change. And it doesn't have to be, a lot of times people hear ESG and this and that, and, carbon tax. I mean, I don't believe in the carbon tax at all. But one of the slogans that we have is that, doing the right thing doesn't have to cost more. Like, we use the analogy of cleaning a room or sweeping stuff under the rug. Like, you still have the mess. It's just you can't really see it. That's kind of like how I see landfilling. Actually doing it right doesn't have to cost more. And in fact, we have had to be cheaper than the landfill to even be considered. So, yeah, we're seeing some forward thinking clients that have, embraced our process, they're seeing what we're doing paying off in dividends. And, it's been sort of time and time again now they're starting to talk about it, and there's kind of this buzz, but, yeah, it's been a journey. It hasn't been easy.
Right. Well, yeah, and I mean, I guess, and I never thought about it like that, but like when I think about business, and not that it's been easy for you because you've got a parent and a grandfather that were like, business moguls, right? Was it more challenging? Like, do you feel a different, like, and I mean, do you feel any sort of pressure to know that your dad's built this, your grandpa's built this, and you're like, I'm down here working, and like where most people go, fucking easy for Rob. Look at who his parents are. Like that's the attitude of a lot of people. But then because I know you well enough to know how driven you are, do you feel that different pressure that nobody else would even really realize?
100%, man. I mean, I'm kinda going through that right now, to be honest. I mean, we're 10 years in, we're still a small company. I don't have hundreds of employees. I already have dozens of employees. And to be honest, the whole thing could go away with a couple of bad years. We're by no means established, and, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, the whole thing would probably be over. I already told my wife that. I said, "If I, you know, am not able to run the business, I don't even try. Just sell the assets and, maybe try and do a licensing agreement with somebody, but don't try to run the business without me." It's still in that owner operator phase, and that's really where I'm at right now is how do we scale this? Because Alberta probably is the best place for what we do, but there's contaminated sites all across Canada. There's contaminated sites all across the north where they had all these army bases and barrels of diesel that have rotted out and polluted the earth. So what we do is important, and I really, yes, I'm doing it to put food on the table, but I'm also doing it to create change. And I would say they're both equal. It's not I'm not just money driven here. I do want to actually create a more sustainable practice in how we deal with contaminated soil and contaminated groundwater, because essentially soil and water are the essence of life. If you don't have soil and you don't have water, you don't have life. And yes, we have lots of soil, and yes, we have lots of water in Canada, and we could probably put all the contaminated soil into landfills and still be okay, but um, there's still a better way. And so I'm my where we're at now is like how do we take what we've created and allow others to run with it? And yeah, that's kind of the scalability piece that we're at now, and I think that, one of the directions that we're gonna go is, in education, there's these projects that we're doing in Kuwait, we've educated, provided WMS statements and SOP statements and all these different statements, and still getting them to follow the instructions is, like, absolutely impossible. And so being able to sit face to face with somebody who's interested in bioremediation, maybe they own an excavating company and they do some dig and dump remediation, but they also think there's gotta be a better way. I wanna sit down with that guy, and I wanna spend 12 hours downloading everything that I've learned on hundreds of sites over 10 years in multiple countries and share, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and be able to sort of build out a network of what I would call authorized applicators, because it's an interesting day and age, and a lot of there has to be, we call it gas. One of the core values of our company is gas, which stands for give a shit. But most people, they don't give a shit, man. Like you walk by a tripping hazard on a site, and they see it, they see it's a tripping hazard, and like just walk by. They don't think, you know, but as a business owner, or as a sort of not even a business owner, just as a proactive coworker, it's like, hey, you know what? I could pick this piece of rebar up and move it to the side or put it in the recycle bin, and then Joe's not going to trip on it. I mean, it just takes 2 seconds, right? But people generally don't think like that. Oh, that's not
No,
my.
and I mean, then that's again, like, I think honestly, it's like the way you were raised, right? The way anybody was raised, and you see that it's the shopping cart analogy. I actually heard it and read it one step further where I'm like, "Shit, I'm guilty of that." And so the shopping cart theory, I mean, most people would know it. I don't need to get in, right? But like, do you put your cart away? Like, period, or do you just leave it? And like, and everybody's got this like freaking excuse, like, well, it's raining or it's this or it's that. It's like, yeah, but you think you're better off and somebody else should pay to clean up after you. Then you back it up again, and it's like into the store with your cart full, and you have something that you're like checking out or you're going or you get one aisle and you're like, "Nah, I don't need that box of Oreos." So I you put it on the shelf, like, where it doesn't belong, and I'm like, "Shit, I done that," and I'm like, "That's no different than the shopping cart." So then it's like, well, I pride myself, like, I always put the cart away, but then it's like, but when else am I expecting somebody else to you know, do something for me? And I'm like, "Oh, dang, okay." So then I've started to, like, when I read that, I was like, "Damn it." Like, "Okay," and I'll walk it through, and so, yeah, like, do you walk by? Do you step? Do you trip over stuff? Do you walk around something because it's, like, tangled up and you don't feel like cleaning it up or whatever, and sometimes, like, I have a dump and go habit. I mean, I'm looking around my desk, and this place is a disaster. Um, and back in the day when I used to drink beer, I used to go to my shop and drink beer and clean up I would just sip on a few beer at the end of the workday and tidy things. The shop was always clean up. And I used to think, "Oh, man, like, when did I stop caring?" Well, the thing is my habits never changed other than I stopped having a beer and cleaning up my shop, right? So I still dumped and goed back then, but I would spend time cleaning it up every once in a while because 'cause I'd invest some time into it and drink a beer, and now that I don't do that, it's like, "Oh, wait, this is the, like," that's the behavior and the pattern that I've created or whatever for my shop, and then it's like, well, actually, if I look at my desk, it's kind of the desk too. I got some things I got to deal with. And so I think those skills that you talk about and like then you want to take everything that you know and expand it out so that you can yeah, grow it. Like is your plan to franchise it or do something? Is that where your brain's at? Is what you're kind of thinking?
Yeah, probably some sort of I don't like the sort of term franchise, but yeah, some sort of, a network of authorized dealers or authorized applicators. Yeah, I want to employ, others to take what we've created and make a difference in their communities too, right? I mean, we're a small company. We're making an impact across Canada, but I know that if we had, 30 people distributed across the country that we'd be making a much bigger impact. So, that's our goal for sure.
Paper money's losing power, but real money, it's been trusted for 5,000 years. When banks print, inflation steals, and markets shake, gold and silver stay solid. Don't wait for headlines, own what's real. Visit learnwealthcycles.com and start building freedom with physical silver and gold today. Have you ever thought of building some form of an online course or something that you could,
Yeah,
train and teach people and do?
that's one of my goals for this winter is to create a course. And like we already have some clients. Like we're an interesting business in that, most of our competitors are either, a bioremediation product company where they have an enzyme or a bacteria or a surfactant or something that's used in remediation, and they sell it to contractors who apply it. Other competitors are contractors that, just do the dig and dump type of remediation or whatever, and we're a bit of a blend of that. My background in heavy equipment and industrial recycling lended itself well to come into this, bioremediation business, and we never really had any intentions of being a product company, but we kinda just found ourselves we just designed I guess we designed our own product because we needed it for our own operations, and now that we have created this process that's working amazingly well and doing all these things that people said was impossible, others have taken note, and we have some groups in Ontario that are buying our product from us now, and I think that developing that education piece with the test, like I'd love to know that the people that I just spent 2 days, teaching, that it actually made sense and that it sunk in, and then they go through the verification and testing, and I know that, this person's gonna have gas. It's just this little things like,
Yeah.
this is a bit of a divergence here, but I share this analogy with my laborers, like my field guys in the field when we do these jobs that, um, you know, some site in northern Manitoba, we probably started talking to that client 3 years ago. I probably went out to Manitoba 2 or 3 times to meet with them and be on site, and, they paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We had to drive 15,000 or 1,500 kilometers and then get on a train, and there's all these things that go into this final moment where, some guy's got the hose and he's doing the application. He's, spraying a wet, liquid amendment full of bacteria and nutrients into the soil, and that's the chance we have right there for that cube of soil that's in that bucket that's being processed. If he sprays it really good, then we're gonna have good results, but if he's not thinking about it, he's just holding it in one spot, and that bucket gets treated, but half the soil got sprayed and half the soil didn't get sprayed, and then another bucket gets put on top of that, and that process kinda repeats itself. There's gonna be failures. There's no magic. If you don't get the bacteria connecting with the contaminant, then you shouldn't expect results. There's no magic. And so I try to exemplify that, like, we get to control everything up until the point where it comes out the end of the hose. And then it's up to nature. So just understand that what you're doing, it may seem kind of stupid holding the hose and spraying some dirt, but it is actually the most critical thing in this entire chain of operations that started 3 years ago.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense because that's the main part about what you're doing. I mean, design and implementation and all of that is only one part of it, but the actual application and the process that you're doing is critical. I mean, it's no different than any business really. Like when you can have everything on paper and then when you execute is like the most important, time and put it into use. So yeah, training and all of that for the different, divisions would be a thing. Like, one of the things that's really important to me is, like, freedom, right? Time freedom, and I'm the last few years, again, I don't wanna get political in anything, but for me, like, freedom for my time has been so important. It's why I shut my construction company down, right? I had to leave every day and go work somewhere else for other people. I love the work, but I didn't like being gone all the time. I couldn't, like couldn't strong word, right? But it was really hard. Middle of summer, I'm not taking time off to go to a birthday party or do something when it's been raining for a week, and now I got finally 2 days of nice weather and I can make money, and I struggled with that. So when I
Mhm.
sold it all and I started doing the investing company, um, I had a lot of my time back. Like, I work a lot. I work crazy hours because I love what I do, but I can still, I mean, I can hear my girls out there talking, and I can just, like, go out of the office and go down the hall and hang out with them for a bit, which I did earlier today, right? And, I'm able to do some of that stuff. So, um, how important is freedom to you for your time freedom and stuff? Because you're gone a lot, I assume, with work, right? Is is environmental, and life impact more important to you than the freedom that other people would be striving for? Because I feel like to really do what you need to do, you're giving up that that time freedom. Am I right in that?
But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I think that I actually was just in a meeting, the one that I was in that I had to push this back for. We talked about this exact same thing. And I think it depends on the stage of life that you're in, right? That's why it's a lot easier to be an entrepreneur when you're a single man, right? You can risk it all, and if you lose it all, you don't have a wife and kids that are, going to be affected. And so, but I think in the same regard, freedom and time, time is, we don't think about it when you're young. It's like, what's the most important thing? It's like money. Well, not really, because you can always make more money. You can't make more time. And so I feel like there's been a couple of successions in my life, namely getting a wife, getting married. That was something where all of a sudden I had less time. And so therefore the time that I was exchanging for work, the value needed to be higher. Now I have 2 kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. I know that, we have 15 years of time when they, need us and want us around. And by the time they're 17 and have boyfriends and girlfriends, I mean, yeah, you're still gonna be dad, but it's gonna be different. And so that honestly has been a bit of a struggle for me because I value my time so much more now than I did, 4 or 5 years ago, that the value for the business needs to be that much higher too. And, yeah, so I think that, everything is can be in retrospect, and there's 2 really good books that, I'm reading right now that speak to this. One is Essentialism, and the other is Buy Back Your Time. And, I'm not sure if you've heard of those books, but,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, if there's any office administrator, gurus out there that are listening to this, we need a rock star in the office, because I do not want to be doing invoicing anymore.
Okay, you know what's hilarious? One of the questions that I like to ask all the people that I'm interviewing is like, do they read? So and then what are their two favorite books? So it's funny that you answered that before I even asked it. I'm like, well, that you ruined it, man. You got out of order. No, I'm just kidding. I
Yeah, no,
spoke
I wouldn't say those are my
today.
favorite books. Those are current books.
I don't know how, and well, so that's nice to say, but and I don't know, and I mean, the audience will hear this and be like, well, when did this come out? Because depending on when I drop this episode, but a friend of mine, lady that I talked to today, literally, when I asked her what her 2 favorite books is, Buy Back Your Time was the book. That was one of her favorite books, and so have you ever read the book E-Myth Revisited?
I've heard of it, I haven't read it.
So, it's all about systems and everything else, and I mean, and it doesn't necessarily talk about, like, buying back your time, but it does talk about delegating and things like that. I haven't read Buy Back Your Time. This is 2 times now in 1 day that I've heard it, so I'm probably gonna just, yeah, download it or get it or whatever. And I have heard about it before, so since we're talking about it then, what would be 2 of your all-time favorite books then?
So I actually I love Dan Brown. He's the guy that wrote, Angels and Demons
Yeah.
and The Da Vinci Code, and I've read all of his books, and, probably I have the illustrated version of The Da Vinci Code that, I used to do heli-portable seismic. This back when I was like 18 or 19 or 20 or something like that, and flying in helicopters and hiking all day. And on some of the holes we would drill, they'd be made of rock, and so you have this hammer, and some of the holes you could just, you're flying, tripping pipe, going as fast as you can, and then all these other ones where you're drilling through rock, you're just sitting there watching dust fly out of a hole for 2 or 3 hours, and so you literally are sitting there, and so I started carrying this book around, and it was this big, thick, illustrated version, and yeah, that's probably my favorite book is, Angels and Demons by Dan Brown. There's so much interesting history, and he's just a really captivating author, so love that one. And, I'm also a big fan of, Jack London, and, a lot of the older sort of, Wolf Fang type stories that he's written. So, I have a collection of his short stories that, I like to read. I started reading some of them to my kids, but things were
Yeah.
a lot more, graphic, I think, back in the day, and so some of them are not, kid-friendly stories.
Dan Brown just released another book with Robert Langdon, like, same character,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Yep.
but it's another new book, Secrets something Secrets of Secret or something like that. I can't remember. I'm gonna have to look it up now because I actually saw it the other day and I was like, "Oh, dang, I'm gonna need to," and I think it's on my one of my 700, um, tabs open. Yeah, Secret of Secrets by Dan Brown, brand new, just came out. And it's been out. I'm
Cool.
like, "Oh, I'm gonna look at it because I read all of those too. Are you on the do you have the Gaia network?
No, I know about Gaia Network, but I'm not a member of it.
Yeah, we downloaded on the weekend because I saw it was on Facebook. There was a, documentary popping up about the mysteries of the Knights Templar, and then same thing, it's like goes back. So, like, if you like Da Vinci Code, you're gonna like all of that, kinda stuff as well, and what they talk about. So it was pretty good. How did you when you started this business, right? How did you what was your startup capital like? Did this business require a lot of equipment and things like that, or was it something that you've bootstrapped and built the whole time? Did you have investors? What kind of things did you do?
So so both actually. Um, and I'm not gonna get into the details of it
Oh,
because it's not appropriate, but, when we got into this business, we essentially were sort of headhunted, I guess you could say, as a construction group that we'd be going into the oil patch and we'd be making big money, twice as much money as we were making doing construction, but doing the same sort of excavation. It was basically the process that we had with the crushing. It was excavators filling a machine, processing material, making a finished product. It was very similar process for cleaning dirt as it was for treating soil, and so that's why we got sort of headhunted, I guess, to get into this opportunity. And I saw the opportunity to really take this ball and run with it. And so we were initially just going to be the sort of field crew, and we ended up becoming the licensor of some technology, the bioremediation technology that it's different from what we have now, but it was apparently this exclusive technology that had been proven and accepted by the regulators, and they had all these millions and millions of dollars of work that needed to get done. They just needed somebody to go and do the work. And so we bought equipment. We put together a six-figure safety program that was, applicable to ISN and all the ComplyWorks type of documentation that you require to go do work in the oil patch. Hired a bunch of guys, did a whole bunch of fabricating. Yeah, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into the business. Did the business for a year, and I realized pretty quickly that the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we had invested into all this equipment and fabrication, and it was a big spread. Like, when we started this process, you'd have an excavator at the front end, this treatment machine, a small stacking conveyor, a large stacking conveyor, and then another piece of equipment, either a loader or an excavator at the end of it to make the final placement for all the soil. So it's this big chain of flow of material. And I saw that I was, paying, four or five guys. I had all this fuel. And the worst part was that if one of those pieces of equipment breaks down, which happens often, your whole production stops. Everyone, and then you got guys that are sitting around, but they're still getting paid. So we paid a lot of money to get into this business, and I realized in the first year that, first of all, the guy that we paid was a fraud, and that he didn't really invent anything. He was buying a product and changing a sticker and wearing a white lab coat to run around and call himself a scientist. He was an amazing salesperson, still one of the best salespeople I've ever met. And I mean, he sold me and he sold another guy after me. I'm not going to name names, but yes, it costs a lot of money to get into this business. But and we did have some funding. Peter was involved in the initial deal. Uh, but we burned through that cash really, really quick. And when I realized that I had made a mistake and that we were going to be separating from this company that we had just invested all this money into, that meant that you're going to be bootstrapping this going forward. And so, um, yeah, there was some capital that I was able to work with sort of my dad on up front that got me started for sure. But that capital all went to somebody else who turned out to be a fraud, and then I got to bootstrap for the last 10 years. And it's been challenging. We've been able to pay back the money that was loaned up front. So that's been a weight off the shoulders for sure, because it's when it's your own money, it's one thing. When it's somebody else's money, it's something else. Even if it is, your parent or somebody in your family, it's still money that's owed. And so it feels good to have overcome that. But yeah, it was both. At the end of the day, I often, like, and I may be sorry if this is one of your other questions, but um, people sometimes say to me, like, would you do it all over again? And it depends on the day. If I'm having a good day at work, then it's like easy, like, oh, for sure. It's been a journey and there's been lots of ups and downs, but that's business. And there's other days where I'm having lots of frustration and would rather be, doing some trades in the morning from 5 until 8:30, and then taking the kids to the park and probably making more money, where I'm like, "You know what? I don't know that I would do it again." So, it depends on the day, um, but you gotta get up. You gotta get up each day, you gotta get dressed, you gotta put your boots on. One of my favorite sayings, and I don't even know why I like it so much, but you gotta get up and get dressed to see what the tide brings in. And, we don't even live by any ocean-bearing water, so there's no tides in the middle of Alberta, but just that saying, you gotta get up, you gotta go see, like, I have a big morning routine and, you gotta do that. And part of my morning routine is getting dressed, into like, not that I wear a suit to work, but, even this versus a t-shirt, it's just something about sort of getting that little bit of a shift from like, okay, I'm no longer, playing with the kids. I've got my work shirt on now and, my hat, I always wear hats and it's like, now dad's going to work.
Yeah. It's funny they say that about getting dressed and, like, back when I was fighting and that kinda, like, life, I dressed up way more. I'd wear a suit to the fight, I have a closet full of suits. I don't wear them. I wear a black t-shirt and jeans every day. I don't have to think about it. I get up, I put on a shirt, and I walk out, and they're all a V-neck,
The
and I
Steve
just
Jobs mentality.
and honestly, I never did it for any of those reasons. Like, I know that I heard that, and I, like, look like I know I have a closet full of clothes. I never wear any of it. It's like I actually started to go, "You know what? Like, this is great." I think I could literally put 7 shirts and 7 pairs of underwear, and socks and pair of jeans, pair of shorts, flip-flop shoes, backpack, and hit the road, and I'd be good. I wouldn't need anything. Wash laundry once a week. Um and, like, so that part's nice. I mean, I have the odd, right? I mean, like, the girls have got me I got a pink shirt that says, "Awesome like my daughters," for Father's Day, and I'll wear that if we're going out somewhere or whatever, like, stuff like that that, kinda means something, but no, I think you're right, though, and, like, having a routine, and that's, like, one of the questions I do like to ask, like, what does a day typically look like for you, and do you try to keep that schedule 7 days a week, or do what do you do? What's a
You know what? It's a good question, and I haven't figured it out. I'm still figuring it out. I do think that, having a bit of a break, like, I'm not a big diet guy. I do the, like, sort of as I guess they call it intermittent fasting. I don't really eat breakfast, and I don't usually eat lunch unless I have a business lunch, and I eat dinner and try to not eat in the evenings and stuff like that. So I guess that's kind of a bit of a diet, but Um, I have done, like, cleanses and stuff like that, and Tim Ferriss, he has, the 4-hour work week and the 4-hour body and stuff like that, and one of his in the 4-hour body, he talks about, your cheat day or whatever, right? And where you're basically eating healthy for 6 days of the week, and 1 day you eat poutine and ice cream and whatever, and apparently there's some, like, caloric benefits to having that big spike once in a while.
Mhm.
So I do think that it needs to be sustainable. Um, but I also think that you need to kind of just follow your body. Like I'm entering into my 40s. I have this vision of being in my best shape of my life in my 40s. I was probably in the best shape of my life in my late teens. I used to be on the football team and just when you're, an 18-year-old man, or 18-year-old young man, you're just generally in pretty good physical
testosterone through the roof. It's, like, pretty easy.
shape. But I do still share that vision and I used to beat myself up like, "Oh, you didn't break a sweat this morning," and now I'm kinda like, "You know what, man? Like, you still got up, you still did some stretching, you still did some push-ups, you still did whatever." And, yeah, try to not beat yourself up. Try to listen to your body. Like, yeah, sometimes I'll just meditate. I'll just don't feel like doing a bunch of running or whatever, and some days I do feel like running, and so just, yeah, listen to your body, but get up and get going.
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, what's one of the best principles that your, grandpa or your dad taught you about finances and money that like, still hold to this day that you're like, "This is something I learned, and this is, like, something I never break." Like, do you have something like that?
Absolutely. I have a great example, and it's actually came up yesterday. I was with my two kids, and I was getting an oil change, and I had called around. I was in Spruce Grove, and I called ahead because I didn't want to wait. I'd taken my daughter to dance class, and I had an hour to get my oil change done and get her to dance class, and so I was calling around, and this place was 3 hours, and this place was 40 minutes. Anyways, I went to Econo Lube, I think it was, and that's not a normal place that I'd go to. And um, I I I asked my or told my daughter, I said, "Hey, just want to teach you a life lesson that Papa taught me, and that is everything is negotiable." And what Jack taught me was and this is 100% true story, and I am happy to share it because it's a great uh a memory of Jack and how frugal he was. Really call it what you want, but he was very wealthy, but he was also very frugal. And, I was at Sport Check with him. I was probably 12 years old. I was just getting into skateboarding, and I really wanted a backpack that had the 2 straps across the back so you could put your skateboard vertically and just fold it on your backpack, right? And there was this company called Trip, and they had this backpack at Sport Check, and for whatever reason, Jack took me to go get this backpack. And so I said, "Yeah, that's the one, Papa." I took it off the shelf, and I was gonna go pay for it. And he said, "Hold on a sec. Just let me have a look at this." And he sort of checks it out, and there was 2 pockets, and the one pocket on the front had a zipper, but the zipper was a little bit tight on one of the corners or something. There was something that just, it worked, like, it was still worth buying, but it just wasn't quite right. And, he was
Like
kinda
like
like,
a like a very, very minor factory defect.
very, very minor fact
Okay.
fact.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
And he's like, he's, you know, watch and learn, basically. And so we went up to the front, and he just said, "My grandson would like to buy this backpack, but the zipper doesn't quite work as it should. Is there anything that you can do?" Well, let me talk to my manager. Went and talked to the manager, came back 2, 3 minutes later. "Yeah, we'll give you 30% off." Oh, perfect. That was like 15 or $20 for a young kid. That was pretty cool, right? And so ever since then, you know, literally everything is negotiable. And there were times I think that my grandma probably was like, "Jack, just pay the bill. You don't need to negotiate on every single thing." But anyways, I was at this gas station or this service station or whatever, oil change place yesterday, and the guy said, "Have you been here before?" I said, "No, I haven't. I usually go to this other place." And I said, "By the way, is there anything that you can do on today's order? Do you guys have any coupons or anything like that?" And he said, "Yeah, I think we do." And he ended up talking to his boss, and and the guy came back and said, "Sorry, there actually isn't anything that we can do for you." And I was 99% done the oil change at this point anyway. So I just, paid the bill, didn't make a big deal about it. But the point is that it didn't cost me anything to have that little bit of extra conversation with the guy. And, usually when I have those conversations, something comes up. Yeah, we'll take the tax off, or 10%, or here's a 50% off for your next one. It doesn't cost anything to ask for a deal. And
You know,
and
like, I the thing is like what you said is like it's not that you ask for a deal either. It's the way that grandpa worded it, right? Like, is there is there something you can do? Is there anything you could do? And, like, literally nothing. It's like you're not being like, "You need to take a discount," or, "What kind of a discount do you have?" He didn't even say that. He's like, "Oh, is there something you can do?" Like, "Hey, I got this little thing. Is there something you can do?" He didn't ask for a discount in that story. He just said, like, "Hey, what can we do here?" Because they coulda come back and said, "Well, yeah, we went over to the rack. We got you a new backpack. This one doesn't have the issues with the zipper, so here you go." Like, you know what I mean? It could have been anything, but they're like, "Oh, yeah, this guy, yeah, we give him a discount, like, big deal." That's super cool, actually, like, to think of that because yeah.
I was gonna say I have a quick follow-up, story on this, because, like with most things in life, there are 2 edges to the sword. There's 2 sides to the coin. So this doesn't always apply, and I'll give you an example of where it didn't apply. So Jack was big into, I can't remember the name of the scooter, but it was this long, like, 1930s sort of sleek, sexy scooter. I can't remember the name of it right now, but anyways, he was really big into these scooters. He must have had one when he was a kid, or wanted one when he was a kid. So he started kind of collecting them when he was a little bit older. But these were like relics. They were made in like the 40s or 50s or 60s or something, and not very many of them. And he had this. this one that had a broken right hand mirror, and he had found one in like Dover, Manitoba, or some crazy place that was, far, far away. And he drove like 15 hours to this farmer's place to negotiate. And the guy wanted $20 and he wanted to spend 15. And he literally walked away from the deal over like $5 and like drove all these hours. And it's like, but, I guess a strong negotiator is a strong negotiator. And yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it's like I saw this clip the other day, and I was talking about Mark Cuban and how he'll buy a year's worth of toothpaste at Costco because he gets, like, a discount with his Costco card and whatever, but then because he can save a few bucks, but then he leaves his jet running so that he doesn't have to wait to take off, where the jet costs more fuel to leave it running than he would spend on toothpaste in a lifetime, and it was just, like, a
Mhm.
different kinda and, like, the principle, because 'cause you're like, "Well, why would you drive 30 hours and not pay $5? Like, that makes no sense, like, literally makes no sense, but it's like, but these principles, and it's like but it goes to show you, right? And then it's like, from a financial standpoint, we all like, people will sit here and go, "Well, that's just stupid, and that's just that," and it's like, guy built a $9 billion business, so don't talk to me about that he didn't have good sound principles that obviously did something, for him. I think yeah, I think that's neat. Another thing that I so, like, when it comes to, like, money and financing, and obviously that's where I'm in, do you feel like you approach things similar to your parents and family, or different when it comes to certain, you know I mean, I know that, you're a client of mine, and we've talked lots about physical hard assets and things like that, and I get the sense that that doesn't align with, like, other people in your family. Like, I don't know, right? But I kinda
Yeah.
gathered that from a few, you know, different conversations, right?
Yeah, I think that over the years I've probably been a much bigger risk taker than my dad or my grandpa would have been. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that I have a different approach to investing. We've worked with a number of investment brokers over the years, and currently I'm self-managing all of my money. I've considered getting another broker, but haven't pulled the trigger. And I don't know. I guess it's I feel like nobody's going to manage my money better than me because it's mine. And but that being said, it's probably some diversification would make sense, have a little bit over here and a little bit over here and a little bit in silver and a little bit in Bitcoin and a little bit in securities and a little bit in securities with the broker over here. And I think that's wise. But it's also stressful to know that you've got it spread out and that you have to manage that. And um, yeah.
I'm kinda with you, though. I don't think that anybody really truly cares as much about your future as you're gonna care about. Now, at the same time, somebody might know more than you know because that's their whole business, right? Like, of managing money and that kinda stuff. Um, I have a hard time in today's world. I talk to people about that pretty adamantly, that most people that have that designation or title of a financial planner or broker really, I mean, it's in the name, for God's sakes, broke. Like, most of them aren't doing that well, right? They do well because they get connected with some people that have some money, and then they're getting commissions and what have you on selling the asset, versus, like, they're implementing all the strategies that they talk about in their own life. Some of them are doing really well, you know what I mean? Like, I do get that, but I think it's it's a fairly easy industry to get into, and that is a problem, right?
Mhm.
I mean, case in point, I mean, I got my license for insurance in 5 weeks, right? I didn't get the final, like, stamp because I didn't sign the thing and pay the money, but I passed everything. I was done everything in 5 weeks. It's an open book test. I'm like, "Okay, what do I even need to study for? I can, like, look at the notes and do the thing and pass it," right? And then I'm being taught by somebody that's telling me the principles, and I'm just following it. Where I'm at now, I'm encouraged to, like, spend a lot of time researching and crunching, and I love numbers. Um, I track everything. And it's funny because the one thing that I need to improve again is my health, and it's the only thing I don't track, and it's the only thing that's not growing in the direction that I want it to. And as I start to track it, oh, look at that. It improves. Um, how important is tracking in your life, like with your business and just your personal life? Do you spend a lot of time analyzing data?
I spend all day analyzing data. I mean, I'm looking at, literally I was up till midnight last night looking at environmental reports for 6 sites that came across my desk, and I think the shortest report was 26 pages, and I think that the longest one was like 317 or something like that. So, yeah, lots of analyzing that type of data. Um, Being a little bit vulnerable right here, but I'm not the most organized person. Yeah, I think by the sounds of your desk, you and I have similar desks. So do we track things? Yeah, of course we track things. We have to. Do we track things like a champion? No, not at all. We track things like a small business that's wearing multiple hats every day. I track certain things very well, like for instance, jobs that we do. That's probably the most important thing, that we make sure we get paid for the work that we do. I would never want to do work and just forget to invoice, because honestly, it's happened to me. I've had somebody do work for me and they never invoiced me, and I'm not really in the business of chasing people to pay them. If and I can't remember what it was for. I probably wasn't super satisfied with what it was. I mean, if somebody does a banger job for me and I really want to make sure that they're available to work for me again, and they forget to send me an invoice or they forget to put something on an invoice, yeah, I'm gonna, if you and I did some business together, Luke, and you forgot to invoice me for something, I'd hope you do the same for me, right? But if it's just some guy off the street that detailed my car and did a shitty job and then didn't invoice me, yeah, I'm probably not gonna follow you up with you to say, "Hey, buddy, you didn't invoice me," right? And I
You know,
feel a
it's interesting you say that because but at the same time, the guy that did the bang up job and the good work is probably organized enough to remember to do that. That said, one time doing concrete, like, cause we tracked everything, basement, garage, driveway, address, right? I knew my profit loss on the basement. That's why I was able to raise my prices on basements, cause I was like, "We don't make money when we do a basement. This is stupid." And the industry in concrete was like, "Well, you do the basement, at kind of at a break even or a loss so that you get the garage and the driveway and you make money there." I'm like, "Well, what if it doesn't have a garage or driveway and it has a stupid sidewalk? Now you lose money twice? That's stupid. No, I'm raising the prices." And I did it. And I was like this, hothead kind of young buck guy when I came into the concrete world. And I was like, I'm not. And prices came up. But I did a job one time for a builder, not related to your family. So no. And but I never invoiced for the garage. And, 5 months later or whatever, we're doing the driveway, and I go to, like, look up the address to allocate the to do the invoice for the thing, and then I gotta, like, assign it to, like, the job so that all the concrete and everything can be tracked there. And, when I pulled up 1, 2, 3, whatever kinda thing, there's basement and driveway that I'm creating, and I'm like, "What what the heck?" And so then I did the invoice, and I didn't even email it yet, I just sort of put it away, and then I started to, like, look in, like, through everything, right? Went back to the time, found the concrete bill, everything's applied to the basement because the bookkeeper didn't know. She's like, "Oh, there's no garage, must be basement." And I had 2 concrete bills and this and that, so I, like, checked the email, and I'm like, "I never invoiced." So I do the invoice up, I go back through, I find the notes, I think I had to drive over there and measure the garage because I didn't even know the square footage, right? And I, like, sent the invoice, and I said, "Hey, like, this invoice is, we did this work 4 months ago," or whatever, and just wondering if it'd be possible to get paid for that a little early, you know? Like, just checking, you know? Not only did he say it couldn't be paid early, told me he wasn't even gonna pay it because he'd already cleaned off the whole house and everything was done, and they had like, the people had lived in there kind of thing, and we were doing the driveway as the spring thing, and I'm like, "It's not like you discounted the house by $7,000, like, you build that into the home, like, you're paying me, or I'm never," and it was like this whole thing, but in saying what you said, it's like, he knew I didn't invoice it, and and he never said anything. I did work for this guy for like 18 years, and it's
Yeah,
like the
that's
fact,
a different story now. That's reputation too, right? I mean, I think that's another you mentioned about, things tidbits that I've learned from Jack and Joan and Peter and Kathy over the years and the other one is reputation. You only get one. And so don't screw it up. And so that I think that that flows into like, that gentleman in your case who didn't pay you and then refused to pay you, his
he did pay me, but he was kind of like he did pay, but he was like basically gonna like he wasn't planning to it. You know what I mean?
yeah, and he clearly, knew and planned on it. And yeah, I mean, I think that in your case, had I been your client, I would hope that I would have said, hey, you know, just so you know, you didn't send me the garage invoice or whatever, because I'm protecting my reputation and my company's reputation by doing so. And so, yeah, that's interesting. Everything depends, but yeah, as far as tracking goes, not great. One of the things that we are looking at doing over the winter is developing better process so that tracking becomes inevitable, because you have to fill out this form to get to the next step so that everything sort of just starts to flow, and it's more of a process than an action that we have to take. Like my guys, when we're on jobs, I tell them, you know, take 200 pictures like a day. Take 200 pictures a day, and I'm happy for you to sit down for half an hour at the end of the day and just go through and delete the ones that you don't need. You don't need 200 pictures to show this job. But if you just get in the habit of taking pictures throughout the day, there's going to be that one thing that changed or the truck came late or the whatever. Just as things are happening, just take pictures because they're time stamped. It's an easy way for you to remember. And so, um, guys go do jobs. Oh, blah, blah, blah. They tell me about something. Did you get a picture? No, we didn't get a picture. It's like, well, wouldn't that have been nice if you could have just shown me this, what you're talking about on the phone, and I could make a comment, right? And so we're talking about making a form that we fill out with the client information, and it's they get a little report at the end of the day, and part of the report is a couple pictures. So they're sort of forcing the
Mm.
organization to happen.
There's some pretty good actual apps out there for that. I'll tell you about them after. Yeah, there's some really good ones that are already built for that, for tracking and stuff. Um, Rob, man, I learned a lot today. I appreciate you. This was a good chat. Where can people find you if they're looking for mediation?
Probably the best place to find us is just on the web. DeltaRemediation.com is the web address. Info@DeltaRemediation.com is the general email inbox. We're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great place to connect with me. And or ask Luke. He's got my cell number. I'm not gonna say it on here, but you're one degree away from me.
There you
If you
go.
know
Well,
who.
thanks a lot for coming on, Rob. I appreciate you, and good luck with things, and I know we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you. When a system shakes, paper wealth disappears overnight. But real wealth, it doesn't flinch. Gold and silver have outlasted every currency ever printed. The question isn't if this next storm comes, it's what will you do when it does. Visit learnwealthcycles.com. You too can own what's real.